Hello, welcome back to Old Saw. Old Saw, for those of you just joining us, is a video blog, I guess, or podcast, whatever, where I recite the stories of the brothers Grimm from this collection, the complete stories, complete fairy tales of the brothers Grimm, as translated by Jack Zipes there. Jack Zipes, in his foreword there, claims that he has the most complete collection of the Brothers Grimm stories, including some that were not published back in the day, early 1800s when they were first published. Also, he claims that this is the truest translation from the German of the time to the English, the American English of the time, in 1987 when he did this. I'll leave it up to the audience to decide whether they agree with his most accurate translation claims and all that. But these are the stories we're going to be going through. 242 stories. Each episode we'll be doing another one. Some of them are very bizarre. Some of them are just confusing. And almost always they are cruel or gross in some way. The Brothers Grimm rarely disappoint on that level. Today's story is an example of how racism, bigotry is just a running thing. This is early 1800s, Germany. Not really all that surprising that there's a lot of racism in the stories. This particular one, the way it's crafted, I mean, quite often it seems like, sometimes it seems like Brothers Grimm are endorsing it, but more often than not, it seems like they are just putting it on display in a unflattering light for the audience to see. I think this is one of those stories. It's a little hard to swallow sometimes because they pull no punches. The Brothers Grimm do not pull punches, whether it's violence or death or the bigotry that they're putting on display. They do not pull punches. So this is a story called The Good Bargain. And it doesn't seem like, at first blush, that there are layers to this, but I think if you really spend some time with it, you realize that what they're doing is not what it first appears that they're doing with these stories. Anyway, so here we go. The Good Bargain, episode number 7 of Old Saw. Okay, Good Bargain. A farmer drove his cow to the market and sold it for $7. Thalers being a unit of money at the time. For $7. On his way home, he had to pass a pond. And even though he was a good distance from the pond, he was able to hear the frogs croaking. Ah, 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 ah. What nonsense, he said to himself. I got $7 in the bargain, not 8. When he reached the water, he called out to the frogs, "You're nothing but stupid creatures. That's what you are. Don't you know better than that? It was $7, not 8. But the frogs held to their ah, ah, ah. Well, if you won't believe me, I can count them out in front of you, he said, and took the money out of his pocket and counted the $7. 24 groschen to the thaler. But the frogs paid no attention to his calculations and kept croaking, ah, ah, ah. That doesn't, the farmer exclaimed quite angrily. If you think you know everything, count it yourselves. He tossed the money right at them, and it landed in the water. He remained standing there and intended to wait until they were finished counting and had returned to him the money. Yet the frogs continued to be stubborn and just kept croaking, ah, ah, ah. Nor did they return the money to him. He waited for quite some time until finally it became dark and he had to go home. Now he cursed the frogs and called out to them, "Water splashers, thickheads, goggle eyes. The only thing you can do with your big mouths is to make loud sounds and hurt people's ears. But you can't count $7. Do you think you can keep me waiting here forever?" Upon saying this, he went away, but the frogs kept croaking, "I, I, I," after him, and he was in a very bad mood when he got home. After some time, he bought another cow, and when he had slaughtered it, he calculated that if he could get a good price for the meat, he could earn as much as 2 cows were worth together and still have the hide left in the bargain. When he got to the city with the meat, he encountered a whole pack of dogs outside the city gate. At the head of the pack was a big greyhound who had jumped around the meat and kept sniffing and barking, "Woof, woof, woof, woof." Since the dog would not stop barking, the farmer said to him, "All right, I understand you're saying woof, woof, woof because you want a whiff of the meat. But I'd be in a fine pickle if I gave it to you." The dog's only response was woof, woof. "Will you promise not to eat it and to vouch for your companions here?" "Woof, woof," said the dog. "Well, if you insist, you can have it. After all, I know you and I know your masters. But let me tell you one thing. I want my money in 3 days, or else you'll be in for trouble. You can just bring it to my place." Thereupon he set the meat on the ground and turned back home. The dogs scrambled for the meat and barked loudly, "Woof, woof." When the farmer heard this from afar, he said to himself, "Just listen. Now they all want some meat, but I'll hold that big dog responsible for whatever happens." After 3 days had passed, the farmer thought, "Tonight he'll have that money in his pocket," and he was quite delighted. However, nobody came and nobody paid him. "You just can't depend on anybody anymore," he said. Finally, his patience gave out, and he went to the butcher in the city and demanded his money. The butcher thought he was joking, but the farmer said, "It's no joke. I want my money. Didn't that big dog bring you all the meat from the cow I slaughtered 3 days ago?" This remark made the butcher angry, and he grabbed a broomstick and drove the farmer out of his shop. "Just wait," the farmer yelled. "There's still some justice in this world." Now he went to the royal castle and requested an audience. So he was led before the king, who was sitting there with his daughter. And the king asked the farmer what wrong had been committed against him. "Ah," he said, "the frogs and the dogs have taken things that rightfully belong to me, and the butcher paid me for some of it with a broomstick." Then he proceeded to tell them in great detail everything that had happened. The king's daughter burst out laughing. And the king said to him, "I can't provide you with justice in this case, but you shall have my daughter for your wife. This is the first time in her life that she has laughed like this, and you're the cause. You can thank God for your good fortune because I promised to give her to whoever made her laugh." He's just going to give her to whoever. I mean, never mind her agency in this conversation. The king's giving her to whoever makes her laugh. I can't imagine why she hasn't been full of laughter before. Anyway, it's the king, because I promised to give her to whoever might make her laugh. "Oh no," responded the farmer. "I definitely don't want her." Sorry. "Oh no," responded the farmer. "I definitely don't want her. I've already got one wife at home and she's too much for me. Whenever I come home, it seems as if I have a wife standing in every corner. Then the king got angry and said, "What a stupid boar. What else can you expect from an ox but beef?" the farmer replied. "Wait," the king declared. "I shall give you another reward, but for the time being, I want you out of here. Come back in 3 days, and I'll pay you 500 in full measure." As the farmer was going out through the gate, the sentry said, "That king must have given you a really fine reward since you made his daughter laugh." "Well, I should think so," answered the farmer. "I'm going to get 500. "Listen," the soldier said, "give me some of it. What can you do with all that money?" "Since it's you," the farmer said, "I'll give you 200. Report to the king in 3 days and let them pay it out to you." Now, a Jew had been standing nearby. You always know that it's going to go well from the point forward when they announce a person's identity by their ethnicity. Not a name, not an occupation, just their ethnic identity is all that identifies them. You always know enlightenment is about to follow, right? All right, so a Jew had been standing nearby and had overheard the conversation. He ran after the farmer, seized him by the coattails, and said, "Wonder of God, what a lucky fellow you are. Let me change that money for you. I'll give you small coins for it. What do you want? What do you want with those hard dollars?" "Yid," the farmer said. "Yid." That's like calling a black guy the N-word. You just call him Yid. The farmer said, "I'll give you 300. So that's all of his money. He gave 200 to the soldier. He's given this Jew 300. "I'll give you 300, but I want the coins right now. In 3 days, you can go to the king and he'll give you my payment." The Jew was happy about the little profit he was making and gave him the sum in bad groschen, 3 of which were worth 2 good ones. Okay. After the 3 days had passed, the farmer followed the king's orders and appeared before the king, who said, "Take off his coat, he shall receive his 500. "Oh," said the farmer, "they don't belong to me anymore. I've given away 200 to the sentry, and the Jew changed 300 for me. According to the law, there's nothing due me anymore." Meanwhile, the soldier and the Jew had entered and demanded what they had won from the farmer. Indeed, they were soon dealt their just measure of blows. The soldier bore the lashings patiently, for he already knew how the whip tasted, but the Jew reacted terribly. "Oh, ow, it hurts. Are these the hard dollars?" So what they're telling us here, with no transition at all, is that the king tricked the farmer and wasn't giving him 500 in coin. He was giving him 500 in lashes of a whip or some sort of device to beat him with. And the dollars apparently, I don't know, has multiple meanings maybe? It's unclear because the storytelling, remember, keep in mind, over time, just like at one point we did cave paintings, and then you see paintings from like the 1100s where there's no perspective and things don't, and then over time eventually you get Picasso and whatnot. Storytelling has a similar evolution over time. It gets the character development, the plot development, everything develop over time, and there's no transitions in these early stories, and there's no the plot, the names. Like I said, he's the Jew. He doesn't have a name. He doesn't have a backstory or anything. He's just a character. All these characters are like that. And here we see there's no transition. You're just supposed to figure it out for yourself, and they don't care if the audience follows or not. You're just keep up or don't. That's your problem. Anyway, here we go. So the Jew is complaining, but the Jew reacted terribly. "Ow, ow, it hurts. Are these the hard dollars?" The king could not help laughing, at what the farmer had done. And when all his anger had vanished, he said, "Since you lost your reward before you even received it, I'm going to make it up to you. Go into my treasure chamber and take as much money as you want." The farmer didn't have to be asked twice, and he filled his large pockets with whatever he could fit inside. Afterwards, he went to the tavern and began counting his money. The Jew had sneaked after him and heard him muttering to himself, "Well, that scoundrel of a king really cheated me. If he'd have doled out that money himself, I'd know exactly what I have. Now, since I had to stuff my pocket any way I could, I don't know whether I've got the right amount." "God help us," the Jew said to himself. "He's speaking disrespectfully of our king. I'm going to run and report him, and then I'll get a reward, and he'll be punished in the bargain." These stereotypes are brutally bad for the Jewish character, or always for the Jew in this time period. The stereotypes are horrible, but what are you going to do? When the king heard about the farmer's remarks, he was infuriated and ordered the Jew to go and fetch the slanderer. The Jew ran to the farmer and said, "Our Majesty, the king wants you to report to him at once, just as you are." "That's not proper, and I know better," the farmer said. "First, I'll have a new coat made for me. Do you think that a man who has so much money like me should appear before the king in an old tattered coat?" When the Jew realized that the farmer would not budge without another coat, he feared the king's anger would subside, and this would prevent him from getting his reward. And the farmer would also go unpunished. "I'll lend you my beautiful coat," he said. "It's just for a short time, and out of friendship, just think of how much one will do out of kindness." That's a weird sentence. Okay. "It's just for a short time, and out of friendship, just think of how much one will do out of kindness." The farmer was pleased by the offer, so he put on the Jew's coat and departed with him. Now the king reprimanded the farmer for his bad remarks, which the Jew had conveyed to him behind the farmer's back. "Come now," said the farmer, "Jews always tell lies." That's what it says right here. Jews always tell lies. There's not a word of truth that comes out of his mouth. Why, that fellow is even capable of claiming that I'm wearing his coat. "What's this?" the Jew screamed. "That is my coat. I lent it to you out of sheer friendship so that you could appear before the king." When the king heard that, he said, "The Jew has certainly deceived someone, either me or the farmer." So he had the Jew given his due again in hard collars, meaning the whipping. Meanwhile, the farmer went home in the good coat with good money in his pocket, and he said, "This time, I made a good bargain." And that's the end of that story. So this whole story, they're painting, first they paint the farmer as an idiot. But then in the end, he ends up outsmarting everybody, which is a weird inconsistency in the story. But also, they're painting this Jewish guy, the Jew, as a deceiver and a liar, but the farmer is the one doing the deceiving and the thieving. He steals the Jew. And I don't understand the king's decision-making at all, the arbitrary nature of his. It's really kind of bizarre what exactly, on the surface, what the lesson is. There's no, these don't end like Aesop's fables with the moral of the story is. So you'll have to figure it out for yourself. This story, it seems to be that the claims made against, the stereotypes made against the Jew are false, are not to be trusted. I'm not even sure that is the lesson. It's hard to be clear what this lesson is, because they talk about the stereotypes about the Jews, but those appear to be false in the story, that the farmer is the one who does those things. But there's also the story of everyone in the story is an idiot. So maybe, is it a mockery of capitalism? Is that the story, that everyone involved in all these bargaining are the idiots? for doing that, it's really unclear. This is another one of those stories where the lesson, the point of the story is unclear, but everybody kind of looks bad. It's almost like Grimm's fairy tales are just, the lesson is that everyone's an idiot. Perhaps that's the lesson. I don't know. That's today's Old Saw episode. Next episode is going to be The Marvelous Minstrel. I'm JD Adler, and this has been Old Saw. Bye-bye.